There is an email address which I'm checking out rarely, and yesterday when I logged in after a long break, saw that I have a message from American chess player Frederick. The message was sent almost 2.5 months ago, but as said, it's never late to publish an Immortal game. Hello chess lovers, Suren here, and in this video want to share with you that same game which didn't miss from Frederick's eye. This game is from Chess24 Banter Blitz session, and Jan Gustafsson is on the black side. His opponent is a chess player whose username is Frostmourne. Frostmourne opened up with e4, to which Gustafsson responded with Caro-Kann defense c6. d4, d5, and it takes d5, white is going for the exchange variation. In here usually white is playing c4, or bishop d3 is also a popular alternative, but in the game we see knight f3. And actually this is a line which we can't call an ambitious one. White is setting up a very solid formation, and then later we'll try to squeeze maximum of the position. We see the exchange of minor pieces on d7, after which white castled kingside. Bishop g7, knight d2, black castled kingside, knight f3, knight e4, rook e1, queen c7, bishop d3, f5. Black is strengthening his knight on e4, and later can go for e5 thrust. Knight g5, queen d6, queen b3, king h8, a prophylactic move. Later it will be very useful to have the king away from this diagonal, and at the same time black is offering the pawn on b7, but winning it is not so good, because in this case white queen can find itself out of the game while black has a nice counterplay. In our game after king h8 we see f3, so white is getting rid of this centralized knight, after which an exchange follows on g5. And finally e5 is on the board, a very important move of course, which is allowing black to activate his pieces. D takes e5, knight takes e5. Not the strongest move. Bishop takes e5 looks stronger. If h3 then d4. But in our game we have knight takes e5, bishop f1, queen c6, rook d1. White is now starting to target the isolated pawn on d5. Also white has a nice bishop paired. All in all the position is equal, but maybe playing from white's perspective is easier. Knight c4, rook e7, b5, queen c2, h6, bishop h4, g5. This is creating weaknesses in black's camp. Instead playing rook e8 is better, trying to get rid of this active rook. This move can't be played because of knight e3. Instead in our game we see g5. Here comes bishop f2, a5. Black is starting a counterplay on the queen side, which is actually a standard idea in the exchange variation of Caro-Kann defense. Rook e1, meanwhile, white is doubling up his rooks on the e-file, and already black has to be careful, but with his next move, by playing a4, Gustafsson got a lost position. At this point, still, rook a e8 was asking itself to be played. But in the game we see a4, and the problem with this move is that black is completely neglecting the fact that his king side is vulnerable, and at this point white went for rook takes g7 sacrifice. An exchange sacrifice with which white is removing an important defensive piece, but rook e6 is actually a stronger move. Once white rook is intruding inside black's camp, black has no chance of saving the game. If rook g8, then white can go for an exchange sacrifice, and then bishop d4, the game is over. Instead we see rook takes g7, king takes g7, bishop d4 check, there it goes. The dark squared bishop is joining the attack with a tempo, and king g6, a terrible move. Well, instead it was better to move back the king on g8. In this case black can prolong his resistance by giving up the queen. By the way, I have to tell you that instead of playing queen g6, if we move like rook f7, then once we see the exchange of rooks on f7, the pawn on f5 drops, and this is even worse. But instead in our game after bishop d4 check we see king g6, and now let's see how white finished up his opponent. Here comes rook e7 with rook g7 threat, plus there is also a very nasty threat which will spoil the combination. That's why I will leave you with a hard task to find that move. To rook e7, Gustafsson answered with a very natural rook f7, and as we've reached the critical position, please pause the video and try to find white's next move. Ready? In here, Frostmourne went for a queen sacrifice. Look at this beauty, guys. When I said at this point there is a very nasty threat, I meant queen takes f5. But queen takes f5 appeared on the board only after black's next move, and now let's see how white finished up his opponent. We have a very impressive king hunt, king f4, rook takes f7 check, queen f6, and rook takes f6 checkmate. A very impressive final combination. Let's take a look at that. Queen takes f5 move once again. There it goes. White is sacrificing his queen in order to force mate in 4. Thanks again to Frederick for sending this game and allowing us to enjoy this beauty. In the end, a chess puzzle for you where the task is to find mate in 3. It's white to move, and I will wait for your answer in the comment section. Thanks for watching. Here are more suggestions for you. Feel free to check them out as well. I will see you in my next video. Take care.